All right, I am here and I am ready to talk about past lives. This is Chelsea, this is my channel. Welcome to Soul Sacral. It's a channel about my spiritual journey, all about living the creative life from the sacral chakra, traveling, adventuring, just all the things that I've learned on my spiritual path. I'm an ex-Mormon, and if you want to learn more about that, please watch my first video. I'll put it right here. And it just goes over my life story from the beginning up until the point that I left the Mormon church in my early 20s, which is a huge part of my journey. And then I also did another video about my spiritual journey and how that happened after a 10-year hiatus being agnostic and really finding peace in Buddhism and other spiritual paths, and then finally stumbling upon spirituality a decade later. So please enjoy those. And today I just wanted to do kind of a shorter video on past lives. And I love the subject. I've done a ton of research over the years during and after my 10-year journey being agnostic, and I just wanted to talk about my experience with that. Before I get started, I want to share a couple people that helped me on my journey. There's a few. I wanted to talk about a couple people on my journey that inspired me and got me interested in past lives, and then I wanted to share my experience with my own past lives that I've had that I think are just remarkable, and I can't wait to share them here on my YouTube channel. So some of the things that helped me on my journey, one of them was Brian Weiss. He's a psychiatrist, and he would do hypnosis sessions with some of his patients, and he documented some of those with their permission, of course. And in a book he wrote, Many Lives and Many Masters. I highly recommend that. I like to share books that have helped me on my journey. Another person who I really love her work is Mira Kelly. She does amazing recorded hypnosises where you can go into your own state of deep relaxation and visualize a past life. Another one that I highly recommend is Dolores Cannon, and she created her own form of hypnosis called QHHT. I've done a couple of those sessions where you can dive deep into your subconscious mind and access past lives that way as well. I also really enjoy Brian Weiss's guided meditations and deep hypnosises that you can purchase along with Mira Kelly's. I did both of those for years. I would do meditations where I would access my subconscious mind, and you are so relaxed that you're able to see and envision a past life. So I wanted to talk about past lives just a little bit and tell my story, my experience with past lives. So past lives can affect our life now. Some people even have physical remnants of a past life, in injuries that they have. And like I said, old injuries or persistent injuries can sometimes be remnants of a past life that's come into this life to continue, or maybe that issue wasn't quite resolved. So in my own memories and my own experience with past lives, I just wanted to tell about two that were the most distinct. So I was doing one of the guided meditations, and two or three, I'll tell. I was doing one of the guided meditations. It might have been Mira Kelly's or Brian Weiss, I can't remember. And all of a sudden, I look down, they guide you to be able to look and to see what you're wearing and look at your feet. And that's where you can start to see if you're a female or a male, where you are, what time period, and all of that. So I had seen little bits of this lifetime, but not much. And I looked down at my feet. I think I was barefoot, and we were in the woods for sure. I could tell it was at least, a couple hundred years ago. And I felt like other women were with me, and we were doing rituals in the woods. I knew that. And I knew that there was almost like, it felt like a cauldron or maybe like a fire in the middle. and I could look down and see my feet, and I was standing on a point. And I knew that this was a star, like multiple points, but I was on one. And I knew that this point was symbolic for the element of earth. Like it stood for earth. And I didn't know anything else. And that's all I saw. I didn't see anything else in that particular instance. Later on, I was able to see so much more of that lifetime, which I can share. But I knew I could see, and I could see more of that star, and it had a circle around it. And I thought, I think that's called a pentagram. I have no idea. I've never been attracted to or looked into pentagrams. And I did some research, and I found out that that was a pentagram. And pentagrams were used in pagan traditions where they would practice energy work, basically, and work with the elements. And each of those points stood for an element. So earth, fire, water, air, and the top point being spirit. And we would cast that in that lifetime around the space where we were working. And eventually I saw that we were practicing what we now would call magic. It wasn't called that then. It was just, we were working with the elements under the light of the moon, or no moon, on a full moon or a dark moon or a full moon at different times of year. And we were actually practicing that and doing some, in our mind, they were good things because we were in that past life. So I'm just saying, this is what I saw and understood. There's no way to prove this at this point. So I'm just going to be referring to what we did, but I have no way to prove that it actually happened. I'm just explaining my memory of the past life and what I saw in deep meditation. So we actually were performing rituals and practices that would harm a certain person or group of people. And it felt like, even though we didn't feel that we were doing anything nefarious, now I can see that that was because those people were actually harming others. So we were doing things to protect them by hurting those people with our practices because we saw it as the greater good. So once those people understood and kind of figured out what we were doing, and I think it was tied in with a religion, and it's a little bit hazy. I didn't see too much, but that's what I understood. They found out, and probably because things were happening in that town to those people, those leaders that we didn't like. They felt like they were men that were doing things that we didn't like. So we were practicing magic to counteract that and to stop them, which could have been causing them harm as well. So they came and they destroyed our village, including all of our children that were in the village when we were practicing one night in the woods. And they captured us, and eventually we were burned at the stake. And so there were several different women in our families were murdered. And it was a very sad lifetime and a sad ending. And I think I vowed in that lifetime not to practice that again and not to have knowledge. And I've kind of uncovered some of those understandings and tried to break some of those vows, because I do think there's a way to be safe about that and to use energy work for the greatest good. Looking back at that lifetime, obviously it was extremely sad to eventually see that my children were burned in a village with my spouse or my partner and our other friends, all because we were trying to do what we thought was right and protect ourselves from these men in this religion that were not doing kind things and allowing people to be who they wanted to be. I also thought about some other lessons that I learned in that lifetime, and that was that people make choices that are not always going to be for the greatest good. And sometimes there's lessons in that choices that people might need to learn. I don't know. It's not any of my business to get involved and to harm another person. And that was a big lesson, I think, in that lifetime, that you can still live the way you want to live. You don't have to interfere with someone else doing what they're doing, basically. So it's a little hazy. There's a lot of details in there that I'm not going into, but you can hopefully get the idea. And the most amazing part to me was the fact that I saw myself standing on this point. I knew that it stood for the element of earth. And then I was able to understand that it was a star with a circle around it, this pentagram, which I didn't even know the word for that. I had to look everything up. And then to find out that each point is representative of an element, spirit being the top one. That was amazing. And I want to say one thing about the pentagram, because I've done some research. So the pentagram was a beautiful protective, it is a beautiful protective symbol with good intentions of protecting a space. It was stolen from men like that we were trying to protect ourselves from now, and it's used in a negative way with low vibration, which is turned upside down. That is not what it was intended for. It's used because it is powerful. I just wanted to share that the pentagram itself is a beautiful, powerful symbol that was used primarily by women, and it's been twisted and used for nefarious purposes now. So you can still use it for good and for protection and for light. So I just wanted to say that about the pentagram. That's what I've learned from accessing that past life memory. Another lifetime that I saw was during one of the QHHT sessions that I had paid someone to go and do. And that's the method that Dolores Cannon came up about, which is a deep hypnosis. And you're accessing lives and sometimes time in between lives, and also some other soul journey information from those sessions. So the lifetime that I saw so clearly during my very first QHHT session, and the first one I saw, and to me, that's when I do readings, it's always the most important information is the first thing that I see. I saw my feet, I looked down, I was a male, and I had these like ornate sandals on, and I knew I had just gotten off a chariot, and I was delivered swiftly with these horses into a city, like a town center, and people were eating and out and about, and I had a white kind of like gown robe on type of thing that went to about my knees, and I was tan and really pretty strong, and I had some gold rings on my fingers, and I was carrying a scroll, and my heart was racing. I could barely breathe. I almost had to end it and tell the woman who was doing it, like, I'm like almost having a heart attack here, because I feel so anxious, and I didn't even know why. So she guides you through it. Okay, let's go to the next scene. Where are you going? And I could see, like, up in bold letters, Emperor. And I knew I was going to see the Emperor. And I knew that I knew him. Like, he was someone who I'd seen many times. So I went on my way, and I was able to understand through her questions that I was a leader of an army. And I had done something by choice that made the Emperor very upset. And I never was able to fully understand what I did. All I could think to understand was that it could have caused a lot of deaths, and it could have been against something that he had asked me to do with the army that I considered to be mine. It was his army, but I was leading it, and they were like my men. I went to his location, this beautiful, huge, wherever he lived, I have no idea. I walk in, and there's a woman that seemed to be his partner or his wife maybe, and she was crying because I knew I was in a lot of trouble, and I was going there knowing this. And she was crying because she knew that I was in a lot of trouble, and I think we might have been friends. And so I go in and see him, and he's casually just like eating this little spread of food, maybe some grapes and some food that's in front of him. And basically, I don't know exactly what he said, but he basically told me that I'm gonna have to die, and for what I did. And I agreeingly went to where the next scene was in the session, because in the session they take you from scene to scene in the life that's important. And I knew that I could have ran away. I could have totally hid and escaped and lived my life doing something else. But I had a feeling in that lifetime that death was honorable. And if you go and die honorably, then it reflects on your family and who you are. And so I wasn't totally afraid to die, even though my heart was racing and there was a lot of fear and adrenaline. But I knew that this was going to happen, and I had made my bed and I had to lay in it. So the next scene was in the area that looked really similar to, I've been to the Colosseum in Rome, and that's what it felt like to me. It could have been a different Colosseum. I have no idea. But I was in this Colosseum, and it was just me in dirt. The floor was all dirt, and my hands were chained to the ground, and everyone was there. It was quite loud, and a lion came out, or more than one, I'm not sure, came out and ate me. Basically, I died by death of lion, and that was that lifetime. And I could see that I did this in order to also honor I think I had at least one child, a son and a wife. And it's interesting because it's very similar. When I watch the Gladiator, I feel like almost familiar with that story. I did not know or think that I'd never seen evidence of someone being tied to the ground and having animals attack them in the Colosseum. Years later, I saw a picture, it might have even been when I was in Rome, but a picture of this being depicted. And it was a lion and a man that was tied in the Colosseum to the ground. And I never knew at that point that ever happened in history. And so that was another incidence where it was just so fascinating to me that something that I saw in my past life regression actually took place that I had never known about. So just another cool story. I could go on and on because I do have other stories where instances I've asked to see in past life regressions, like, oh, why have I had a history of being claustrophobic? And I've seen the lifetime that indicated why. And the other one was with my children when I was burned at the stake and my village being burnt down, including my children that were in it. My whole entire lifetime, my kids are old now, like one's an adult and one's an older teenager, but I have been paranoid and very protective of them in a weird way, like overly protective. And understanding that helped me to understand why. So I just wanted to tell those stories about past lives because I find them so fascinating. And now when I do readings for people, I'm able to see sometimes a past life come in that explains why a person's having maybe a financial issues or difficulty with a certain relative or a friend. And I can see intuitively what that's tied to in a past life. Not always has to do with that, but sometimes it does. So I just wanted to share my experience with past lives. One of my favorite books that I highly recommend is called Journey of Souls. And that's about life in between lives and the journey that one soul can take. Again, Brian Weiss's book is amazing. And Mira Kelly, if you want to do past life regressions, I highly recommend her meditations as well as Brian Weiss. So I hope you have a beautiful day. And as always, my message is please know that you are deeply loved no matter what, just as you are. Not doing anything else, just being yourself. And there is so much unconditional love surrounding all of us. I know that for a fact. Throughout all of the readings and all of the sessions that I've done, seeing our unseen loved ones, our guides, our spirit guides, our angels, our ancestors. They're loving us and they're supporting us and they're encouraging us. So have a beautiful day. I did want to pull a card. I should have announced it at the beginning. I'm going to try to pull a card after each video that I do. This is one of my favorite decks. I bought it in Sedona. An artist made it. It's called No Frills Oracle. And the back of the deck has this cute little fish on it. And I'm going to pull a card. So if you're watching this, not today, maybe the next day after I make this, or maybe next year, just know that this card is for you. Maybe think of a question or something that you're wondering about. I got love molecules. Love is the message. Occupy your heart. That's perfect for what I just shared, that just bringing attention into your heart. As we know, where our attention goes, the energy flows. So just take a moment to just bring your attention into your heart. And just take a deep breath. Allow your heart to expand. And think of something that brings you joy. Think of something that makes you happy. Maybe it's just taking that deep breath. And feeling that energy in your heart allows you to bring in more of that. So I'll leave you with that.